So now that we've talked hooks, let's talk about yarn. And how they're categorized and how best to use those hooks we talked about with the yarn that you have. So first and foremost, the standards of yarn are set by the Craft Yarn Council, and you can find that at www.yarnstandards.com. I've linked to that exact page. With that being said, there are 8 weights of yarn that are commercially produced for crafting, like that tend to be sold for home crafters and homemakers. Now, there's slight differences for those of you who are in formalized fashion environments, but generally the same weights are used by the factories that make your yarn. So either way, it's good to know what these are so that you can gauge what to do. Now, one thing before we get into these yarn weights, I don't want you to be discouraged by seeing a certain yarn weight. I also don't want you to think that because one particular spun yarn is labeled one way, it's exactly the same as the other. There are still variations based on machine spun, hand spun, whether it's wool or cotton or linen or acrylic. All those different yarns have interior properties, like microscopic interior properties that make the yarn different, and that's why things feel differently. Like this is a all acrylic sweater. It has a bit of an itch to it, like certain breeds of wools. Now, some sheep are bred to have more of a hardier, scratchier wool. Some sheep are bred to have a softer wool, yet they still may have the same craft yarn weight number. So that's something to consider, but let's get into each weight. So first, from 0 to 7, you have lace, super fine, fine, light, medium, bulky, super bulky, and jumbo. Now, you'll also hear the names fingering, sock, sport, DK, worsted, super bulky, chunky, and jumbo, or roving in relation to some of these yarns. You may just find that the yarn that you want to use just feels a certain way, and you want to use a certain hook depending on how thick of a fabric or small of a fabric. In fact, and I'll review this book in full in a future video, but a stitch dictionary like this one, Everyway Stitch Dictionary, will go into how to create crochet fabric. And yes, once you've crocheted, it becomes fabric. And you'll see that in this case, depending on the hook size and the size of the yarn, will create a variety of patterns and different. Some ways of crocheting make your fabric more opaque or closed, and some make it more mesh or open. So really, your hook and your yarn together, choosing those things are a personal preference. But since we're beginning, I am going to choose for you. I am going to tell you to go to your favorite big box store or yarn store. Now, honestly, go to the yarn store first, because the yarn store is going to have the absolute best selection and the best quality, well curated yarns from people who love this craft, especially if you're into garment making and amigurumi making. So they're going to be able to tell you, these yarns I've purchased because they're great for garments. Start here. Or these yarns are great for amigurumi. These yarns are hyperallergenic if you're concerned about certain environmental factors. Now, I got news for you. Spoiler alert. No fiber is completely environmentally friendly. The issue with fast fashion and overabundance of fiber and fabric and clothing made products in the world is that we don't always have a proper way of reusing, and we have more than enough clothing made from fast fashion retailers to clothe the world. So you may find that you want to go to the thrift store, take a sweater like this, find as much as best you can, find where it unravels, unravel it, clean it up as yarn, and stitch with that. And of course, you may not exactly know what was used in that, but generally I will say the number 2 sport weight or the number 3 DK weight tend to be what mass-produced sweaters come in. They call it sport, the number 2 weight sport, because it's tend to be used in sportswear. And if they want the more of a thicker look, DK. Those machine knitted and machine open knit, which is what you're seeing when you're seeing so many things that look like crochet. They're either open knit or they're embroidered on an embroidery machine that can handle a thicker thread, like a super fine fingering weight or even a number 2 level thread. And then there's a thin fabric that disappears, which again, that's something that the environmental quality is kind of unknown of. Those yarns and those fabrics tend to, that's how that process happens. I could show you examples of what all the different numbers look like, but I'm just gonna stick today with the numbers themselves. I'm gonna tell you to go on to the Craft Yarn Council's website, pause after you pause this video, and maybe don't go ahead to getting started with stitches yet, unless you are comfortable with just saying, okay, I, Kristen, told you to use number 4 acrylic worsted either by Red Heart or by Loops and Threads or Barraco. If you go to a local yarn store, they'll probably have either Cascade, Barraco, Blue Sky, or if you want to have a little fun and get a more expensive skein, but I would suggest spending no more than $8 to $10 on an acrylic skein, maybe 16 at the most, if that's like the cheapest yarn they have in the store, because generally the number 4 worsted acrylic, because it's the most popular yarn, will be the cheapest that they have. Hey, it's Editing Kristen here, and really, my number 1 recommendation for you if you're getting started, get a number 8 at 8 millimeter, also labeled an L if you're buying it in the United States, hook. Get a yarn that is a number 5 weight. Loops and Threads, I believe it's called Indivisible, but there's a Loops and Threads that's a number 5 chunky weight that's at that particular store. Or ask your local yarn store to give you a slightly bigger yarn that's a number 5. Also, make sure it's anti-plying. You don't want it to split on you. I tried to teach a beginner's class once, and I gave them a splitty cotton because I wanted to teach them on natural fibers. No, acrylic, anti-plying, 4 or 5 number, preferably a 5, even a 6 that does not split, so that your stitches can be seen. Oh, and make sure bright colors. Anyway, let me get back to the other part of the video. That's what I would suggest. And with those suggestions, I encourage you, after you've explored and you've gone to a yarn store or you've gone to the aisle at Michael's or whatever, it's just order a sample pack from somewhere like Crochet or Knit Picks, same company technically, Hobley, or go to a thrift store, go to a craft thrift store, especially go to a craft thrift store, because a craft thrift store is going to have even more hodgepodge variety, and this is saving that yarn from a landfill, same with estate sales. So try all those options, and when you've tried all those options, then go ahead and come back here, and so I will see you in the next video.